Since October of 2020, gamers have been able to get early access of Baldur's Gate 3 through Steam. This game was developed by Larian Studios, the same studio that was responsible for Divinity original Sin video games. In comparison to other role-playing games available at the time, the original Baldur's Gate titles had significant technological breakthroughs. As a result, players have great hopes for the long-awaited sequel. In point of fact, the game is up against some difficult competition from a lot of prominent players this year, including the forthcoming release of Starfield by Bethesda. But lovers of role-playing games will find that Baldur's Gate 3 has a lot to offer. A game of the highlights include a rich narrative and history, tactical turn-based combat, a complex and compelling tale with intriguing companion characters, magnificent graphics and visuals, and the opportunity to play with friends in multiplayer co-op. I'm going to go into the specifics of all these things and more in the following section, including an analysis of what the game has to offer, how the developers have dealt with early access, and what their strategy is for future releases. Will it be sufficient to make buying Baldur's Gate 3 a worthwhile investment? Let us find out, shall we? The Baldur's Gate franchise is a collection of role-playing games that are all set in the vast fantasy world of Dungeons & Dragons, one of the most well-known tabletop role-playing game series. Both the original Baldur's Gate and its sequel Baldur's Gate 2 were made available for personal computer, PC, and Macintosh (Mac) users in the years 1998 and 2000 respectively. Even though the series has had releases on consoles for subsequent spin-offs, expansions, and upgraded editions, the PC has traditionally been the primary platform for its games. BioWare was the company that created the first two games, and Interplay was the company that released them. However, the publication of Baldur's Gate 2, Interplay, which was having financial difficulties at the time, lost the license to create additional Dungeons & Dragons based video games. After being purchased by Wizards of the Coast, the intellectual property, or IP, remained in circulation for a number of years, during which time other studios expressed interest in acquiring the rights to it. Larian Studios was one of those firms. However, it wasn't until they experienced success with Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2 that Wizards of the Coast felt confidence enough in their ability to develop a compelling game. Larian Studios was one of those companies. The Balespawn Saga is the name given to the plotline that runs through both Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2. The progeny of Baal, or Baal, the Lord of Murder, were free to roam the land in those realms. At the conclusion of the downloadable content for the second game, careful spoilers, players were ultimately given the option to choosing whether or not Baal or Baal returned to the game. The events of those earlier parts of the series will take place approximately a century before the beginning of Baldur's Gate 3. There are not many characters left in the Forgotten Realms who are still alive and can recall the events of the Balespawn Saga from their own perspectives. The designers at Larian Studios have stated that the majority of the game's races, the event in question has been relegated to the annals of history. On the other hand, it has been stated unequivocally that the developers of Baldur's Gate that everything that was in the games that came before it will play an increasingly important role in the narrative as it develops. Even while we do not yet know how, it is likely that some plot points from the earlier games are continuing to have an influence on the Forgotten Realms, even though it has been a century since they were first introduced. The fighting system in Baldur's Gate 3 is based on the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rule set, just as the story and the realm it takes place in. The game operates in real time while you are exploring the world, but when you start a fight, it switches to a turn-based system without you having to do anything special. Because of this development, players are now able to approach combat situations strategically. The designers of the game have stated that they approach the creation of combat in the same manner that they would a puzzle. That is, as something the players will need to solve. For instance, the design of a combat zone may place large creatures that deal direct damage at the front of the arena, with rogue archers shooting you from the rooftops and a magic caster casting spells at you from out of a window further back. How do you intend to go about fighting that battle? Who among the adversaries should your party focus its attention on killing first, and how can your group accomplish it while still taking casualties from the other combatants? It is not going to be a Mash X kind of game where you can just smash your way through it by using raw force like it is in the other games. Combat in Baldur's Gate 3 will involve some strategy and planning. This may be disorienting for some players who are used to the games with faster action and a higher tempo, but it may have a significant impact on whether or not they believe that Baldur's Gate 3 is worth purchasing. Imagine that the fight is a game of chess, in which you must carefully plan out your initial attack. Consider the order in which attacks will be made and plan accordingly. Will you rush in with a fighter to divert everyone's attention away from your wizard so they may focus on you? I was wondering if you could have that crowd control wizard put a ranged character to sleep in the back. And what happens if the enemy manages to land a major critical strike on your character who is the focus of the battle? The fight also has a significant amount of unpredictability, with dice rolls being used in accordance with the Dungeons & Dragons rule set as the basis. Because of this, the plays are often chaotic and at times infuriating. The fact that each encounter, gameplay, race, character and scenario is slightly different and intriguing makes the game's randomness and unpredictability an essential part of its design. Not let the fact that this will be a considerably slower paced experience for the majority of players throw you off from attempting the game. The building and challenge are where Baldur's Gate 3 shines, and you should not let this deter you from giving the game a shot. Character creation is typically a highlight for many people who like role-playing games or RPGs, since many people take pleasure in the process of crafting their ideal character, with the ideal physical attributes and personality traits. The character builder in Baldur's Gate 3 is more than simply an aesthetically pleasing interface. It also allows you to choose your character's race, maybe a sub-race, class, subclass, background and talents, all of which are contributed to the overall identity of your character. When it first releases, Baldur's Gate will offer a player's selection of over 11 races, 28 sub-races, 12 classes, and 46 subclasses to pick from. And according to Larian Studios, each and every one of these components play a significant part in the identity of your character, determining not only who they are, but also how the rest of the world will respond to and interact with them. The actual creator is incredibly intricate and detailed, making it one of the most powerful tools we've ever seen in a video game. This is a fantasy RPG's fan idea brought to life thanks to the vast number of distinct D&D races available, such as the Dragonborn, the Drow, the Githyanki and the Tiefling. Simply having this system may be enough to convince some people that Baldur's Gate 3 is worth purchasing. I will state that one of the drawbacks of making a character is that the benefits, particularly the racial bonuses, are really crucial to your build, and as far as we are aware, you will not be able to change them. The bonuses have a significant impact on your character's overall performance, either positively or negatively. If you give your paladin a suboptimal race, then it will be difficult for them to complete challenging combat at their level or lower. Be forewarned that if performance is of paramount importance, you really do need to identify and select a suitable race, otherwise you will be re-rolling 20 hours into the game when you have a horrible ability distribution and build. Your interactions with the outside world are yet another facet of both your character and your creator. In the expansive globe of the Forgotten Realms, all creatures and people mix and mingle with one another, and they occasionally come into conflict with one another. The identity and temperament of your character will have a significant impact on the plot that unfolds before you. Your selection of a race will have an effect on the many conversation paths that are open to you. When you go out in the world and encounter people of that race, they will speak to you in a manner that is distinct from how you would converse with a person from another country. It is possible that certain non-playable characters won't want to follow you if there are trust or mistrust issues between their races. The primary narrative of Baldur's Gate will adhere to a predetermined course, but the game's branching dialogue options will allow you to bring both the world and your character to life. These options are determined by your character's class, race, and other characteristics. Even though many of the quests, whether main or side, lead in nearly the same linear direction, the amount of control you have over your character is on par with that of Mass Effect and Dragon Age. This is something that will not become apparent until your first playthrough, but if you re-roll a new character with a different race or class, you will be absolutely shocked at how different the story is. There will be optional tasks that you can choose to undertake right away or put off for a while and return to at a later time. There will be partners that you can bring along with you on your quests, but you also have the option to ignore or bypass them totally if you want so. These friends are essential to the construction and loadout of your party, and some of them can even be romantically involved. Traditional games don't nearly have as many possibilities for players to romance their friends as this one does. You will have a few conversations with them, give them a present, possibly complete a personal mission, go through a cutscene, and then you will hook up with them. In Baldur's Gate 3, you will be required to make an investment in your loved spouse. However, if you botch the investment, your partner will leave you. And the solution isn't as straightforward as saying, hey, let's wait until the very end of the game and then might as well hook up. It might be challenging to pull off romance in a computer game. Interactions, missions, and storylines should all serve to pique your interest in that particular individual. And in contrast to most of the other role-playing games, you won't be able to view the complete plot until you put some effort into this facet. Other NPC interactions found throughout the world will present circumstances in which you might interfere. Often, you will be required to make a moral choice that will have repercussions in-game for your character, as well as influence the other members of your party feel about you. The path you choose and the events that unfold as a result of the decisions you make will be shaped by the implications of those choices. Your playthrough will not be precisely the same as anybody else's, nor are you likely to have the same experience if you go back and create a totally new character to play again as. This is because your playthrough will be unique to you. Larian Studios has reported that the game will include over 174 hours of cinematics upon its release. This is being done in order to assist the entire tale, as well as to cover all of the various narrative routes and possibilities. The third installment of the Baldur's Gate series featured extensive use of motion capture technology, which lends an air of believability to the characters' faces and movements. Players have an almost infinite number of possibilities to choose from when customizing their characters thanks to the creation of the character and the various look options available to them. And while players might be concerned that the top-down isometric view would prevent them from getting a good look at the finer aspects of their character and the friends they play with, they should remember that there will be a significant amount of cutscenes throughout the game. During those cutscenes, there will be a lot of fantastic storytelling moments and conversations, and the level of graphical detail that is present in them will be substantially enhanced. In addition, the environments in Baldur's Gate 3 are intricate, rich, and vivid. They also feature deep atmospheric effects that help them make the world credible, despite the fact that it's filled with aspects of fantasy all around you. The scenery and textures continue to look impressive even when the settings are turned down from ultra. Things don't start to blur and become much more straightforward until after you decrease the settings to their lowest possible levels. Regarding the aesthetics as a whole, you might be wondering if the graphical quality of Baldur's Gate 3 truly pushes the boundaries of what technology is capable of doing in the current generation of PCs and video game consoles. The visual quality is somewhere between that of Mass Effect and The Witcher 3 in my opinion. The Witcher is the pinnacle of games from the present generation, while Baldur's Gate 3 is plausible enough to be placed in the same category as other modern video games. When you land a critical hit, there are dazzling cinematic captures and elaborate animations to accompany it, as is the case throughout the majority of the game. The majority of the focus is centered on the narrative and the interactions that take place between the characters through the use of dialogue panels. If you want graphics of the finest possible fidelity, the game is not for you. However, if you want incredible narrative telling combined with graphics that are up to date, it most certainly has that. It should come as no surprise that Larian Studios has allowed for multiplayer features and cooperative gameplay possibilities, given that Dungeons & Dragons is based on the tabletop universe of Dungeons & Dragons, which is where the game first got its start. The campaign of Baldur's Gate 3 can be experienced in a manner analogous of that of the traditional board game by a party of 4 players working together cooperatively. There are 2 different approaches to taking part in the game with other people. The first allows you and up to 3 friends to participate in a campaign that is already underway. You can accomplish this by selecting multiplayer from the main menu of the game. You can view a list of lobbies or games that are currently available by selecting the online or LAN tabs up top. Find a friend and play the game with them together. You will be able to choose the non-playable character companion you want to play as, such as Astarion, Shadowheart, Lae'zel, Will, or Gale. You have the ability to choose which character and class you want to play as, and the host will then place you in that role. The second option is for all the members of the group to embark on a new journey simultaneously. Once more, select multiplayer from the main menu to get started with the multiplayer mode. It is necessary for one player to select the create button in order to initiate the creation of a new game and lobby. After that, their friends will be able to join the lobby, and then everyone will be able to click launch to begin a new game in which they can construct their own unique character. I spent a lot of time in early access playing with 2 other people, and we all agreed that the co-op mode is a lot of fun. You are free to explore the area on your own, but when there is significant conversation taking over, you will be brought into it. You are able to conduct independent actions during combat, and you can even delegate the management of your companions to another member of your party. Although the party leader or lobby host has the majority of power, the other players do have some degree of liberty, particularly when it comes to fighting and the construction of builds. You are able to play as and take control of your friends' characters as companions in the event that they are unable to join you in the game or if a member of the group leaves. This is a wonderful opportunity to learn about other constructions and to experiment with others. In addition, you can level up a lot quicker while everyone else is spread out doing different things like finishing missions, selling items and starting new quests. When it comes to the several dialogue possibilities, every player gets a vote, which is yet another entertaining facet of the game. The control of the game stays with the player who initiated the conversation in the first place. However, the other players can indicate which choice they favor. Because BG3 is not a massively multiplayer online game, you should not anticipate vast towns with hundreds of players. My impression is that the multiplayer mode was designed with a lot of thought put into it, in contrast to other games that seem to have thrown it together at the 11th hour. The game is built on the tale and the road that your character takes, and having a small group of people to play with adds a lovely touch to the experience. This new feature might make it worthwhile to purchase Baldur's Gate 3 for players who are coming to it from a background in the classic tabletop Dungeons & Dragons game. One of the things that a lot of people who play and appreciate role-playing games enjoy the most is the width and depth of the narrative in Baldur's Gate 3, which is a big strength. A narrative in which the decisions you make have an impact, and which can develop in different ways and reach a variety of conclusions depending on how you play the game. In this type of game, once you have finished the main storyline of the game, you can start over with a brand new character and have an entirely new experience. It is impossible to overstate the amount of replayability that this game possesses, and it is entirely possible that the players will continue to play and enjoy Baldur's Gate 3 for many years to come. Having said that, it is necessary to point out that this enormous strength may also conceal some deficiencies. The sheer magnitude of the game's content can be overwhelming for today's gamers. The majority of us are adults with real lives outside of gaming, including jobs, families, and other responsibilities. The video game Baldur's Gate 3 is one that requires commitment. Even if all you do is play through the main story without any side quests, the developers anticipate that the game will still take at least 75 hours to finish. Even in early access, where there is only one act to complete, there is an incredibly quantity of content. For me, the branching dialogue options are the most mind-numbing aspect of the game. Every time I play a different class to gather research for builds and a tier list, the experience is the same but also very different from the last time. During one of my playthroughs, I ended up killing my partner, and during another, a member of my team quit. In one playtime, I was able to win a very challenging battle, while in another I had to reload the game 100 times to be successful. During one playing, I was able to do a sidestep on a crucial battle, whereas during another, I was forced to engage it immediately. The fact that language is determined by a dice roll is essential to the narrative, despite the fact that it first put me off in a big way. I wasn't able to comprehend everything, so I just wanted to make a selection and obtain the result. But the element of chance, much as the gameplay itself, makes the game a lot more fascinating. Although it is possible to simply save before playing and reload the game 100 times in order to obtain that 20 dice score, the playtime itself, along with the randomness that occurs when things do not go your way, adds a great deal of the game's replayability. Dice rolls and the ridiculous number of branching dialogues give the impression that you are playing a role-playing game on the level of Skyrim. Every time you play through the game is unique. During each fresh gameplay, you are presented with more information regarding the tale, the game, and even yourself. You are often exposed to fresh information and experiences, and you often find yourself wondering, what if I play the Druid Bard the next time? How about we respond to the opening question? Should you make the investment in this game? In a nutshell, in a TLDR, purchasing Baldur's Gate 3 ensures that the player will get an immersive role-playing experience along with a gripping plot, strategic gameplay, magnificent visuals, and the opportunity to actively participate in the continued development of the game. If you are a fan of the genre, Dungeons & Dragons universe, or you simply seek an epic and unforgettable adventure, then Baldur's Gate 3 is an absolute must-have title that will provide you with the numerous hours of gameplay that is both exhilarating and engaging. I wouldn't recommend playing this game if you're looking for a fast-paced action experience like a shooter or an action-based role-playing game. If you aren't a lover of fantasy or Dungeons & Dragons, or if you just don't like extensive cutscenes and a lot of speech options, you probably should steer clear of this game. With conclusion, the designers at Larian Studios have crafted an incredible world for players to explore, one that is rich with intriguing personalities, captivating narratives, and choices that are morally ambiguous. You will have the ability to influence the course of events that befall your character, form alliances, and make consequential choices that will have far-reaching repercussions, which will immerse you in an experience that is both fully immersive and engaging. If you are thinking about purchasing Baldur's Gate 3, the cost of the base game is $60. In my opinion, this is a value that is well worth the money. There are other versions of the game that can be purchased for a higher price. These editions are packaged with either digital cosmetics or actual objects, depending on what kind of content is more appealing to the buyer. And that was my review of Baldur's Gate 3. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.